remember telling my mom when I would come home, I'm like, I can't fit in with these students, like I can't do this. And she would always encourage me, you're just as good as the other students. So for high school, I didn't do really well. When you're moving to like a new school, it's very awkward. You're trying to meet new friends, you're trying to fit in, much like I can see that you guys probably have had that experience of being in high school and wanting to fit into the crowd. And I just felt like I wasn't fitting in, and I really wanted to do well academically and do as well as the other students. So a lot of people were taking AP classes in high school. It was highly competitive, and I think at the time I couldn't detach my personal worth from school. Like I mentioned earlier, school is great, but it isn't your whole entire worth, and I didn't. So things started to change for me in grade 11 and 12, and I was really studying really hard to try to keep up with everybody. Everybody was doing AP classes, it was highly competitive, like I said, and I noticed I just got burnt out one day. I just felt my whole body was just exhausted, and it was just an exhaustion that just took over everything. I had headaches, I experienced insomnia. I would go to school and I wouldn't sleep for like the whole night, and I would have to go to school. And people just kind of realized something was going on, but really didn't understand what was going on. I didn't have anyone to confide in at the time. So this went on for weeks on end, and it really intensified like in the 12th grade, and I experienced what is called intense dissociation. So I remember being in class, and it was basically a result of the burnout that I experienced, and I felt like I was detached from everything around me. It was a very weird and scary experience, but it happens when you have a mental health breakdown. It's like you are seeing everything around you, but you feel like you're watching it as if you're in a movie. And that was what was happening to me, and I was in class feeling that way, and I didn't know what was going on. There was even one moment where I cried all the way home from school after taking the bus. And I didn't even care who was watching me, I just felt so detached from my reality and my situation. So for signs at school, I became very distant for a time. I hid out in the library away from friends, I couldn't focus on school, and I dropped courses, all my courses except for English. English is my favorite subject to this day, and I knew something was wrong because I dropped all my courses just to do English and I couldn't keep up. The teacher at the time, she was like, what's going on? Like, you know, I gave you one assignment, you're not finishing it. But she didn't understand that I was going through something really intense that I didn't even know what was going on. Depression affects your functioning and your cognitive abilities. So I remember at one point, waking up, I would have to like mark down everything, like shower, eat. Everything just became super hard for me to do, and I was crying all the time and just exhausted from what I was going through. And there was also a pressure to finish school because I would take off time from school and just be on the couch sometimes, just crying, depressed, sad. And teachers would wonder like why I wasn't finishing assignments, but they didn't know that I was experiencing a depressive episode that I didn't know at the time. Things got worse, and things went on like this for a time. And eventually I became suicidal. I didn't know how to reach out to help at school. It's so good that you guys have programs like this today, and you are able to have social workers and people, guidance counselors at your schools. At my private school, not to bash them or anything, but they didn't have that type of support. So I didn't know who to reach out to when I was having this crisis. My parents knew, but didn't know how to help. I also think they didn't understand the magnitude because of the lack of education. Like I said, coming from a Jamaican background, we don't really talk about mental health, so they just figured maybe I was just overtired and exhausted, but they didn't know it was something deeper. So being a good parent, my mom thought, okay, there's a trip to Atlanta coming up for grade 12. Why not go to the trip and see if you'll feel better on the trip? And she was being a good parent. She just thought having the crowd and support of friends would help me. But when I went on the trip, I experienced dissociation the whole time, just feeling literally like a robot. That's how I describe it to this day. I was going through the motions, and it was a beautiful trip. To this day, I just mourn that I had that experience for my younger self because the trip was beautiful. We were in Atlanta, you know, seeing all the houses. We went to the Coca-Cola factory. And imagine being in high school, like you are, just hanging out with your friends, wanting to fit in, wanting to be cool, and you're experiencing depression that no one knows. Some students thought I was being wimpy and weak, but they didn't know that I was experiencing a serious depressive episode. In private, I would cry and have thoughts of no longer being alive. It was really hard, especially being in high school. Once I got back home, things escalated, and there was a time around May where I almost made an attempt on my life. And this is where my parents really saw that something was totally wrong, and they got in contact with mental health resources, and I was sent to the Canadian Mental Health and Addictions Hospital, which was hard and traumatic. So imagine being 18, you don't really know the mental health system. I did not know that there were mental health hospitals that existed, and it was a traumatic experience for me. It was dealing with other adults who had mental health challenges, being in the hospital all by myself. All of my friends were preparing for graduation, and I was in the hospital with depression, so it was very hard. But I was introduced to meds for the first time, and I was on my road to recovery. The stigma of mental health. So like I said, coming from a Jamaican background, I heard comments that having a mental illness meant I was crazy or mad. In my culture, mental health isn't talked about, and this is what makes the experience so isolating. You guys may come from different cultures where mental health just isn't talked about, and it can make it so much more of an isolating experience. Eventually, things did improve for me when I got in contact with the early intervention team at the Canadian Mental Health Association. I got a caseworker, and eventually my meds did start to work. One day I felt hopeful. There was a moment in my journey when I felt all my senses and my depression seemed to lift. I got back to school because I had to drop all my courses, but I was able to go back to high school and graduate. I was able to go to York for journalism. I felt happy, thankful, and hopeful. But the journey to mental health wellness is not linear. Things were great for 4 years until I started taking my medication on and off by mistake. I had a relapse when I was 22, and I had to stop school at York. I know the exact moment when I had a relapse at York. I was actually doing a presentation, like today, and I felt off. I felt something was off, and I called my caseworker that day and I said, I don't feel right. The thing with mental health medication is you have to take it consistently. So it's there to help your brain, it's there to help you function. It's not just like a happy pill like people say commercially. It's actually something to help you feel better so that you can function cognitively. And she told me, I think you're relapsing and we need to get you help again. And I got depressed and went through the same process, the whole process all again. It was terrible. And I was hospitalized again for my safety. But I got on new meds and started taking them daily. I joined group therapy this time, and I was able to graduate with my journalism degree from York University. How things are today. Today I'm doing much better than I was at 18 and 22. I take my meds daily and they really help. I'm also in therapy to address my mental health and just daily life. I became a writer and I got published with CBC News recently. I also advocated for mental health through JAP.org, which is an organization that trains you to spot signs of distress in others. But recovery isn't linear. If there's anything I can say to anyone today is that there's hope, but it's not a linear process. There's still days where I have bad days, where I struggle, where I feel sad and anxious, but you just have to use your resources. Sometimes it's a hotline, sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's therapy. But you have to use your resources to keep you on track and know that it isn't a linear process to becoming better. So I just want you to know that you aren't alone, and despite any mental health struggles, you can accomplish what you set out to do and live a happy and healthy life. You also aren't less if you struggle with or experience relapses in your journey. It's all in seasons and it's all a process. Being educated on mental health is important so we can educate ourselves and others. Also, as students, please take it easy on yourself and know that it's okay to do things at your own pace. Have a balance. Enjoy school, but engage in hobbies as well. You will find your way. Thank you so much for listening to me.